My name is Kym Grosso. I'm a New York Times and USA Today bestselling author. I'm best known for my Immortals in New Orleans series, which is erotic paranormal romance. I also have another series called Club Altura, which is erotic suspense series. I have 10 audiobooks so far that were produced through ACX, and I'm currently working on my 11th, and I have 2 box sets that are going to be coming out as well. When I set up my author profile, when I was trying to attract narrators, I had set up a per finished hour rate to be able to attract the best narrators. And I did get a lot of great samples when I did that. I also make sure that my profile matches my Amazon profile as best as possible so that they know what type of book they're reading. And then I also provide the audition for them with the kind of script that I want them to be able to read. In picking an audition script, it's one of the critical components of the profile because you want to make sure that you have a very wide sample of how you would like your narrator to sound with different voices within. I'm always trying to look at dialogue and also trying to pick different action scenes or love scenes. You want to hear an audition with samples that best portray your book. It's great to hear a little bit of narration, but you also want to hear voices, you want to hear accents, you want to hear the love scenes, and all of those things that go into making the full book. Selecting a narrator only was difficult because we got a lot of auditions that came in that were really great. The type of voice I was looking for when I started auditioning was somebody who had a really smooth, sexy voice. I wanted a male voice. I had asked my readers what kind of voice they wanted, male, female, they wanted a male. And I put auditions out. Ryan West is my narrator. He's got a really smooth, great voice. He's also great with accents, and I have different accents, different characters with accents in my book, so that was really important factor too. You hear your characters in your head, and then when you hear somebody else portray them, it really is a cool experience, especially with Ryan. When he does the characters, especially like in a Cajun accent, it brings the characters to life, and I do like listening to it. It's just a little bit strange for me because I hear them in my own head and then you hear an actor portraying them. 15 minutes is usually long enough to get some dialogue, which would be different than the audition script when you're trying to get different parts. So I've already selected the voice. I'm listening to make sure, is he doing the accent a little too heavy, a little too light? We go through, and usually if there's any kind of adjustments on pronunciation of words or anything like that, that's when we address it in the first 15 minutes. While Ryan is recording the book, I am usually getting my readers excited. You're building that pre-excitement about the audio coming out. What I might do is I might have giveaways of my other audiobooks. I'll start reminding them of the samples because I have sample trailers on YouTube for my audiobooks. I have the SoundCloud links. I just put those out last week. You're doing all those kinds of things to build up anticipation, and people are asking, where's the audiobook? And you're trying to, you're answering questions, and you're really just preparing them that it's going to come out. When I get the recording back from Brick Shop and Ryan, usually what I do is I listen to a little bit of it, but for the entire book, my husband Keith, he's very detail oriented. He will listen to it from beginning to end. If we have any errors or any mispronunciations or missing words, and usually we don't have that many, but if we do, then we can give that feedback to Brick Shop. You really should be detail oriented and willing to listen to every minute of the recording when it comes back, in order to do a quality check on it before it gets uploaded. The marketing that you do once the book comes out is similar to the marketing that you would do with the ebook. You're trying to create excitement or build off the excitement, launch off the excitement that you built before or pre-release. Once it comes out, then you're engaging blogs, you're engaging readers, you're using the codes that ACX gave you if you can try and get reviews on your audiobook. There are blogs that specifically will review audiobooks and help you get the word out about your audiobooks. So you really just treat it as you would an ebook launch, except now you're getting the audiobook launch. When I'm ready to produce my next book, I reach out to Brickshop probably 45 days to 60 days in advance to let them know that my book's going to be coming in the pipeline, and then they can get back to me and let me know whether Ryan's available or not and when we're going to be able to get the audiobook recorded. I'm glad I used ACX. In the beginning, when you're an indie author, everything can be overwhelming. But coming through ACX, it's easy to use. You have access to many different narrators, and it's just been a really great process. You meet readers that read an ebook, they read in print. I've met visually impaired readers recently at a signing, and there's just people who love audiobooks. They love audiobooks. They can't wait for them to come out, and it's great to be able to be at a signing or be online or social media and say, yes, I have my book on audiobook. You know, not everybody can say that. ACX lets any author do that.
Welcome back to ACX University. My name is Scott Jacoby, and today we are filming The Life of an ACX Author. We are joined by Kym Grosso, New York Times and USA Today bestseller of the Immortals of New Orleans series, who has been kind enough to invite us out to her home in Westchester, Pennsylvania to speak today. Thanks, Kym.
You're welcome.
Why don't we start off by you telling us a little bit about yourself, the books that you write, and the type of author you are.
I write the Immortals of New Orleans series, which is erotic paranormal romance. I also have a smaller series that I just started, which is contemporary erotic suspense. But I'm best known for my main series. I love paranormal, and that's the Immortals of New Orleans series. And right now there are 9 books currently in the series, and all of the books in that series are on audiobook.
Great. And are you traditionally published, self-published, hybrid?
I'm self-published. I'm indie, and when I first started writing, I didn't think anybody was going to read my books.
And now?
And now they do.
And now they listen as well?
Yeah, so I am self-published, and I really like it because I enjoy having the control over my books and also the audiobook portion.
Great. Speaking of the audiobooks, how did you come to find ACX? How did you first get to producing your books in audio?
Well, I had been learning from other authors that people were putting their books on audiobook, and I had put Cade out initially because there's a couple of different ways that you can do your audiobooks. I had put it out for royalty share, and I hadn't gotten any auditions.
And Kate is one of your books?
And Cade was the first in series.
Cade. Mm-hmm.
By the time I got to my 4th book, which was Logan's book, I had offered money per the royalty. It's a money per finished hour for the book.
Right.
And I got a lot of auditions for that when I went to have to pay for it. So Logan was my new release, Logan and Katie and Wolves, and that was the very first audiobook I ever did.
So you initially listed your books as a royalty share production, but found that you were getting better and more auditions when you offered a per finished hour rate. Is that correct?
Yes. I wasn't getting as many auditions when I had it up for royalty share. And then as soon as I offered the money for the per finished hour, then I got many auditions. And I got some really great ones. And I had settled on Ryan West from Brickshop Audio.
And what is it like working with a full-service studio on ACX? Ryan does your books, but you do the work through Brickshop because they provide the full audiobook services, right? Initially,
I worked a lot with Rob and Chris, who own Brickshop, but I also talk with Ryan as well now. Some authors, they work directly with the narrator, and that narrator produces their audiobooks. This way, with Rob and Chris at Brickshop Audio, they manage the time of their actors within their studios. So if I needed somebody else, if I needed a female actor who worked within their studios, I could go to Rob and Chris and I could ask them ahead of time instead of having to search all over for someone. I can go to them and they would be able to help me.
So that's part of what you get offering that full per finished hour rate. You get a full service studio, and it just makes the process a little easier for you.
Yes, and I think for me, it's like the reliability. I always feel like with Brickshop, I'm always getting top quality, well-made audiobooks, and you know, they are made on time. They work with ACX a lot. They know what they're doing. I always feel comfortable going with them. and I would recommend them to anyone. As far as having that, you're self-published, so you're working with vendors that you know are going to give you quality product, and they always do.
Right, and that's important, just like it is in the
Yes.
ebook. If you're working with a cover artist,
Yes.
audiobook, working with a professional who
Right.
can provide you what you need.
Exactly.
Yeah. So going back to the ebook idea, so you've published a number of books, and when you decide you're ready to get them on ACX, you're going to bring them to Brickshop. What are you doing before the book is coming to ACX to make sure that it's right for audio, that it works in audio, sounds good in audio?
Initially, I hadn't done anything, but once you start making audiobooks, you can hear certain things when you're listening to them, and you're listening to a lot of dialogue tags, or even writing in perspective. I write third person perspective, and so I might have a female character one chapter now. What I will do on purpose right now, I will make sure there are no breaks within a chapter. I will have chapter all one perspective, like the hero's perspective, and then the next chapter will be all the heroine's perspective. And so my writing has deliberately changed now when I'm doing that, because there may be a time when I want a male and a female to narrate my books, and in order for that to happen more easily, I know that that's something I should get in the habit of doing when I'm writing my books. So I deliberately do that. And also, again, with the dialogue tags, I am very conscious. It's not that I don't use dialogue tags, because I absolutely do, but I am more conscious to not use as many and think to myself, how is this going to sound in audio?
Are you hearing Ryan's voice in your head as you're writing?
It's funny. I don't know. When I listen, because I was just listening to his audiobook, it's like, oh yeah, that's me. That is like my brand in my books when I listen to Ryan. But when I'm writing now, I don't. I just hear the characters. The characters are just the characters.
And it sounds like Ryan's interpretation of them affects your writing in a sense that it makes it a little more natural. You said you're not using quite as many of the tags. Maybe the dialogue flows a little more easier.
Right. Like you just, when you listen to things in audio, you don't want to hear as many he said or she said. You want to hear it more like it's being acted. It's like voice acting. They're acting the part. Maybe not overacting, because you don't want it to sound too dramatic to deter from your listening experience, but it's definitely different than the reading experience of. So I still have dialogue tags, but just not as many, and I'm conscious of what I'm writing, and how that could be affected when it comes out in audio.
And you mentioned overacting or something not quite sounding right. What, in your opinion, separates a good performance from a bad performance in that way? How can other authors, what can they avoid or lean into?
I think all the narrators, they all seem to have, like, because I've listened to they all seem to have their own style. So as an indie, you're choosing which style you like. Your readers are choosing which narrators they like and what style they like. My books have a lot of accents in them, which is unusual. My contemporary series does not, but my series that's paranormal does. We've had Australian accents, British accents, Cajun accents, American. I mean, we have Italian now. So it's like I want them to hear a little bit of an accent, but not so much that it's going to deter from the storyline or their listening experience. So it doesn't take them out of the book. You want them to remain in the book. So if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And having them fall into your world and fall into your world via Ryan's performance is exactly what everybody's looking for out of an audiobook. So when you first came to ACX, you started by having your fourth book in your series published instead of your first. Why did you decide to do that, and would you do it differently if you did it again?
I had published my fourth book because it was my new release, Slogans and Katie and Wolves. It was my fourth book in my series. It was a new release. And I just went with that because it was that when I'm doing and I have a new release, I focus on the new release
That's what's
for everything.
on your mind, right?
But in retrospect, if I was starting new and if I gave advice to somebody else, I would say start with your first in series, especially if you have a long-running series. There's 9 books in the series. People want to listen in order. They want to read in order. And even though my books can be read standalone, most of my readers prefer to read them in order. So that was just a beginning kind of mistake, but I fixed it, and they're all done.
And they're
now.
all available
Yeah.
now, and everybody can listen to all of them.
Yes.
When you work with Ryan, you talked about rolling your books out and your fans wanting them all out there. Part of that is marketing your audiobooks and getting your fans excited for the next book that's going to come out. Can you tell us a little bit about the type of audiobook marketing that you do and whether you team with Ryan to do any of that?
I don't team with Ryan to do any of that, of the marketing per se. Ryan has done, in the very beginning, he was part and did some interviews with some of the audiobook blogs. Ryan's an actor, so he has a stage name and he does the voice narration, and he also does acting. For me, I do give him ACX codes so that Ryan has, he has copies of the book, and he's super great. I always joke around that I shouldn't say this on camera, that my husband has a man crush on him, because my husband Keith, he totally reviews all my books, and he loves Ryan. He loves him, and we met him in person. He was so excited. He was totally blushing. So we've met him in person a couple of times, and he's super nice. He's a great. He doesn't really help me with the marketing as much, but the marketing as an indie author, I look at that's my responsibility.
Right.
I get the codes from ACX, so I use them in a way to get them out to my readers to help get reviews going. I use the codes to do giveaways to get people excited. I use them for past books. If I'm getting ready to launch an audiobook, like I'm getting ready to now, I'm sharing clips from past books. I'm doing audiobook giveaways. I'm taking snippets. I just did it today. I'm taking snippets of Jake's book. Even though it's not released, I'm giving them like a minute or two. Hey,
Right,
listen to what's coming. And they're getting excited, and they're thinking about the audiobook. So yeah, I mean, I'm treating it like an ebook launch, except it's audiobooks. And there's a few blogs that I go to that they'll review for me, and they have an audiobook following. And also, I would say in the past year, I've noticed there's more social media groups geared towards audiobook listeners. So again, that's just another means of reaching out to readers who might say, oh my gosh, I love paranormal books, but I've never heard of you.
Right.
Okay, so here's a sample. Here's a trailer you could listen to.
Right.
And it just sort of gets you in contact with audiobook readers that you might not otherwise be able to reach. So social media is a great way to get in touch with everybody.
And I was going to ask you more about the audiobook trailers. You mentioned that you do these video trailers to get your fans excited. Can you tell me more about that? What are they? How do you put them together? How do you get them out there?
The last one I made was for Dimitri. I didn't do one for Jax, but I had, I have a few marketing people who help me, use video software to put together different, video footage and stock, plus you're overlaying a snippet from your audiobook and with your cover, so you're associating your cover with the audio.
Right.
And you're putting it out. It might be like 1 or 2 minutes, but it's just something that it's the visual plus the audio that people are getting, and it's something that you can put on YouTube.
And then do you then put that link share it on Facebook or Twitter?
Yeah, I put it on, and I share it in my groups, and I have had it on my webpage at different times. But today, like what I did today, there's no video behind it, but it's just a picture of the book, and they get to listen. That's what they want to hear, and they get excited about the book coming out, because many of my readers have already read the book. So
and then they're buying it again in audio?
They just love audio, yeah.
That's great. And I love the idea of providing a visual element to go along with the audio, just to cement the memory in their mind, providing the cover art or something that reminds them of the book. I think that's really smart.
It's just a little extra effort to put together a video for it, but I think it's just another means of being able to market your audiobook.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of marketing your audiobook, you mentioned earlier reviewers, audiobook blogs, things like that. How do you find these audiobook blogs, reviewers, and how are you getting them to review your audiobook?
In the beginning, I think I have to say in the very beginning, they sort of would come to me, or I'd meet them at the sign. Sometimes I'll meet them at a signing, and they'll be like, I'm going to say Eargasms is one of them. She, comes to me and says, hey, I review audiobooks. Or they'll approach me. They'll tell me when they come to the table, like if I'm doing a signing or whatever. And I'm always telling people, I do audiobooks because not everybody does them. So I think part of it is making sure as an author, you're always telling people. And then, but as far as how an author would get in touch with them, I would go definitely on Facebook. And there's more audiobook driven groups now where readers can meet other readers and get recommendations for books and things like that. And there are audiobook reviewers there too.
And so you're giving them the ACX promo codes that you can request once your book goes live?
My readers that I have already that are already reviewers. But like if somebody came to me at a signing, for example, and they said, I have a blog and I review audiobooks, then most definitely I would ask them, I would say, hey, would you like to review my book? And if they would like to review my book, then I'll give them a code and I'll send it to them.
Great, or just get an email address, and I guess that helps build your
Mm-hmm.
email list as well, so that's somebody else you can keep engaged as new content comes out.
Yes.
Yeah, great. Why, this is almost a good setup question, but why is it important to have your books in audio? You said you find that some of your readers are buying the books in multiple formats. Are you also finding that you have a new audience of just listeners? Like, why audio?
It's just funny. It's just like one of those things when you talk to people, it's just more and more people are listening to audiobooks. They're listening on their phones. They are listening on their computers. They're listening at the beach. They're listening in the car. I've asked them before. I said, what are you doing when you're listening to your audiobooks? They're going to the gym. They're gardening. Some people are just listening to them, like they would be reading a book. So it's one more way to provide readers to experience a book. And then you also have visually impaired readers. I've met a couple of visually impaired readers at signings recently. And so it's awesome to be in touch with them. And also it's awesome to get their opinion or their feedback on what they're hearing and as far as narration and who might be a good narrator or who might not be a good narrator. What do they like? So that's another readership that's out there and how people are using the audiobooks. There's just more and more people are getting into audio and they love them. So I just like being able to have another way for my readers to get my books.
I think it's important to have your work available in all formats. We sometimes call it format complete, ebook, print, and audiobook. I think that these days, it's not about putting one thing out there and then hoping people will buy it. You have to make everything you can available to your fans and give them let them consume it the way they want to consume it.
Right. And I think that it's just with the way the technology is with phones and having all the apps. And so people are listening to them. They don't need to use and this is like totally dating myself, but you don't need a CD. You don't need that. You just download the book and you go for your car ride and you can listen to the book when you're there. So it's funny. It's been a journey. I want to say it's been 2.5, 3 years that I've been doing this, but there's just more and more and more interest in the audiobooks over that time.
Ryan West has narrated all 10 of your audiobooks, but you work with Brickshop Audiobooks. What makes Ryan the right narrator for your books? Why is he such a good voice for what you put out there?
My books are erotic paranormal romance. So they're erotic, they're romance, they're mystery. I always joke there's not a book I write that doesn't have murder in it, except for one. So he just has this really smooth sounding, sexy voice, and the readers, they love the way he sounds. And also, especially with my paranormal series, I have a lot of accents, which can be hard to do. It can be hard. An actor needs to train themselves to be able to do different accents. So he's able to do all those, and it sounds authentic when he's doing it. So he's just been a really great narrator, and he's reliable, and, we get the books done on time. And so he's just, I don't know, my readers really love him for that series. and as far as branding, I think it has to do with, erotic romance. His voice is super smooth and sexy, and the readers just, they say they melt when they listen to him. So he fits with my books, and his voice is great.
And did you? How many other narrators did you audition for your books before him, and how were they different from Ryan, whom you finally landed on?
I think I can't remember exactly how many. I might have had like 12 or something like that. But I think that in listening to audiobooks, all the narrators are different. Some are more animated in the way they're speaking. Some sound more, I don't want to say robotic, for lack of a better term, but I have heard audiobooks like that sound that way. So I think it really just depends. I mean, as an indie author, you need to gauge when you're listening to auditions, how do you want your book to sound? How do you want it to sound? And when I listen to Ryan, that's how I want my books to sound. So I do think for my other series at some point, because I am thinking of maybe switching narrators for that series, it's also erotic, but sometimes you also want to keep things fresh and maybe bring on new voices. Like I had mentioned, I might want to have a female and do co-narration where the female does the female perspective and the male does the male perspective in the books. And so that's why I changed my writing. So if I decide to go to that direction, that my books are already written that way.
Right, and it sounds like you're not just looking for a narrator that sounds good, but you mentioned somebody that really fits your brand, and that Ryan's performance, beyond just being a good actor and not, say, robotic, you found his voice to be very smooth.
Yes.
Was there, what's it like to sort of be a casting agent? You're an author, yet you're going through all these auditions. Is that weird? Is it fun?
It is fun. I mean, because you just listen to all these different voices going through, reading your words, and they sound completely different. Like, you'll have some, and I'm not really sure what it is. Well, I can listen to one voice. They're both professional narrators. They're both great, but one just that clicks with my book and my brand, and so that's the voice for my series.
And so it almost sounds like it's intuitive, the knowledge of, you say it clicks. Do you think that's about knowing your own brand well? Is that really important going into the process? Who you are and what you write?
I do think I know what my own brand is. I mean, I know that my books are erotic, but I also know that they've got all like this story and all this mystery. And so you need somebody who's going to be able to, I want that to come across in my audiobooks. And I don't want it to sound robotic. And I knew that I wanted a male, and I had discussed it with my readers when I had first started. Like, who would you want to listen to reading my books? Like, I asked my readers, what would you like? And they were like, we would like a guy reading us our books. I'm sure you would. Okay, let's get Ryan. And so they love him. They love him, though. So
how do
it
you
works well.
How do you communicate with your fans in this way? You say you reached out to your fans. Are you doing this on social media, your email list?
I have a reader group. I have a couple of reader groups. I have a larger reader group, and then I have a smaller reader group. And at the time, I really only had my small reader group, so it's only like 50 people in that one.
And is this on Facebook?
Yeah.
Yep.
And so, I would ask them, I'd do a poll, like, who would you like if you guys know my books? Like, at that point, they knew my books, even 3 into the series.
Right.
Would you like a woman? Would you like a male? Like, not to say one's better than the other, because everybody chooses who they want to be narrating their books. And I've asked them, how would you like a male or a female? I've asked them that recently, and they'll say yes, but they were like me. Like, initially when I thought male, female, and this is just another thing for authors to know, I was thinking, I'm not sure, I was seeing it more like a play or something in my head than they read one chapter and they don't co-read the chapters together usually. That's my understanding, which is why Brick Shop is great, because I could go to Brick Shop and say, how would I do this if I was going to do this?
And they can provide some guidance.
And they provided guidance to me, and they would say to me, well, this is how you need to write it, and this is how it's going to sound. It's not like you think it's going to sound, Kym.
Right.
Which was, dialogue is going to be male,
right.
female.
It's
That's
not like a
not
multicast
no,
audio
no.
drama. What's interesting is it sounds like this is an opportunity. You're almost marketing your audiobooks just by asking your fans what they think of them. You're starting out early in the process. You're getting them primed for the idea of audiobooks. it's sort of marketing and getting feedback, learning all at the same time.
And I think some of my readers, they've never listened to an audiobook, but if you have readers that really like your books and you say, would you like to listen to my book? And they really like to read your book, a lot of them will start listening to audiobooks. So, and they'll follow Ryan.
Right.
So, for example, they might listen to Ryan on my series, but then you can go into Audible or wherever and you can select by narrator. So if you love Ryan West, you can go on Audible and you can listen to a whole bunch of other books, and there are other erotic romance books that he does.
Right.
And he does other books as well. So the readers, you get new readers to audio, and you get, I don't know what you call them, established audio
Right.
listeners who know exactly what they're looking for.
Do you have any sense of your audience and how many sort of new fans you've gained through audio that are only audio listeners versus how many people are just huge Kym Grosso fans that are just going to get whatever you put out there?
You know, I'm not really sure about the numbers. I just know that I have both. I absolutely know that I have both. I have, because there are, you get to know people on social media. There's people who, I know that they read my books on ebook, and then I'll see them at a signing and they're buying a print book, and then they're also listening on audio. So, but then I'll have some readers who will tell me, well, I only want to read a paperback. That's all they want to read is a paperback. They don't want it on ebook. So that's why just getting back to what we talked about, you have to have it on all formats, but I don't know the exact statistics.
What advice would you have for a first-time author producing their books in audio coming to ACX? If you could allow them to learn from your experience, what would you tell them?
I think the most important thing is when you're getting started, you want to select the right narrator. And in order for you to select the right narrator, to making sure that you have the right audition script, make sure your audition script reflects dialogue. If you have characters with accents, make sure your audition script reflects the characters that are using accents. If you have a lot of action or you have a lot of romance, love scenes in your book, make sure you get a little bit of that. And you can get all of that into a script. It might not, it's not going to be all in one chapter. You might do like 2 pages here, 2 pages here, 2 pages there. That way you get a variety of what you're looking for, because you don't want to just pick chapter 1 because it's typically narration.
Right.
A lot of it can be narration, not always, but you want to make sure that you get the character speaking, because that's really important when they're talking in audio back and forth with each other. So
Casting sounds
casting,
like a really important
it is.
part
And
of the
so when you're
process.
getting started, that's the very beginning of the process. And so you need to try and make sure you can do the best, because there's some things you can control and some things you can't. But your audition script is one of the things you can control, and picking your narrator is the other. So getting started, that's one of the things. And if you're not getting enough auditions because you're doing royalty share, then consider offering the per finished hour rate to get more selection.
In terms of things you can control and can't control, what does it feel like to sort of give up your baby? You've written this book, and you have to trust your narrator to a certain extent with what you've written and to perform it properly. Now, you've established a relationship with Ryan West, so perhaps at this point you have a lot of trust in him. But is it weird at first to put your work in somebody else's hands?
I think for somebody who's indie, it's always hard.
Yeah.
Because I think we're a little bit more control freaks, because we
You run the
control
show.
everything. We're controlling the cover and the pictures, and you're editing and you're formatting everything. You're taking care of every little detail. But when something like this, I really don't have any knowledge of recording anything. So that's why when you select a narrator, or if you go with somebody like Brick Shop, I feel like I can trust them to do whatever they need. I know that I get my end product is going to be quality. I don't have to worry about it getting kicked back to me because some audio setting was off. They know exactly what they're doing. And as far as like the review process, that's what you do have control over the review process. So if there's a small error, if it's an editing error, those are usually easy to fix. They just, finish that. And then as long as Ryan's in town, if there's something that needs to be re-recorded, which every now and then there is, but not usually, they can do that. And so it's just, you do need to just like be able to hire somebody that you can trust. Because like I said, I don't know anything about audio. I've been up there. I've actually been in the
You've
studio.
been to Brick Shop.
I have been up
Oh,
to
nice.
Brick Shop.
How did that come about?
At RWA when I went there, and I was working with Hannah and Rob, and they had asked me, "Do you want to come see the studio?" And I was like, "Yes, I do." And then they're in these little tiny studios, but I sat in there. I was like, "Can you take my picture?" So, but I mean, it just gives you a perspective of what they're doing. They have these little, they have the iPads, and they do a lot of prep work. That's the other thing you can control. You can control making sure. Send them your manuscript. Do they need it in a Mobi file? Would they rather, how would they really want it? Yes, you upload through ACX. You do your Word file, but sometimes they, I always ask just to be, accommodating because we control the formatting. So we have the files in every format. So if they want it, however's easiest, you can offer that. So, but in the end, you have to give up control and let them make your book.
But it sounds like that's easier to do knowing your book is in the hands of a professional studio. And as you mentioned, even if you wanted to go with a different actor or actress for your next series, you would still know that you're in good hands of the studio, and it wouldn't be quite as much of a leap.
Yes.
So you're a pro at this now that you've produced 10 books in audio with an 11th on the way. And we were talking about how now you're thinking about the audiobook at the beginning of your process, even at the beginning of your writing process, as you're having different pieces of the book put together. How are you involving your eventual audiobook production as you go through the beginning process of starting your new books?
I think even before I start writing, often I do the covers before. In the past, I would have been retrofitting a cover to go on audio. Now, when my cover is being designed for the print book and it's being designed for the ebook, it's also being designed for the audiobook. So it may be looking slightly different, but it looks better, I think, because they're not trying to just take what was a rectangle and make it into a square. So you're always thinking, even then, before I even start writing, and then during the writing process, I'm doing some of the things that we mentioned with the perspectives and the tags. I'm always just trying to think. I just know, especially for Immortals in New Orleans, like that it's going to be an audiobook, and how in the end that's sort of almost like the final process of a book. Once the audiobook comes out, that is the end, and then I'm on to the next one.
Right.
And I think some of the things that we were talking about was like even working with Brick Shop while I'm writing my draft. I'm contacting Brick Shop outside of the ACX, sending them over an email saying, "Hey, Rob, just letting you know, in a couple of months or maybe 45 days. It depends how. It's usually like 45 days to 60 days. I'll write them ahead of time and say, I'm going to be doing an audiobook. It's going to be releasing on such and such a date. I'm going to try and get the manuscript to you by this date."
Right.
So
that way they can schedule your narrator and have everything prepared.
Yeah, because Ryan's really popular and he's busy, and this way they can at least like pencil me in, even though it's not official until it goes through ACX, and that's when I get my official date of when you're going through ACX and you're getting your first 15-minute date, and then the date where it comes back to you for review and stuff.
And so then
so
when
it's
it goes
prior
live,
to that
right.
to give them a heads up and to get it scheduled so that you get time with the narrator.
And so it sounds like these are all things that, as an author entrepreneur, you need to be able to handle. As you said, you're indie. Just sort of being able to schedule everything, work with different contractors, whether it's for cover art, narrators, and stuff like that. And so I'm hearing that the audiobook is the final form. It's just another part of that process of something to work out as a businesswoman.
Right. I generally roll out the ebook first. The print book sometimes comes out the same day, sometimes not, but it's always the thing that I work on last because I need to get it formatted. And then The audiobook, because I'm pushing it out the door, that, and a lot of times it depends on when they can do it. And I kind of like it that way because then it's an extra push and extra publicity for the book. So Jake came out last month at the end of May, and so probably in August. So it's like another push. Hey, Jake's there.
Right.
It
Another
will
reason to
remind
your
people
fans, right.
that, hey, Jake came out. You're always trying to reach out. So it's just something else exciting that's coming out for them.
And how are you reaching out to your fans to let them know that the newest book has come out? What are you scheduling in terms of marketing to really push when the audiobook does come out?
Probably, and I have to talk to Shauna. I didn't talk about Shauna Hunt, but she does my PR for me.
Okay.
We'll schedule like a blitz, like where for all the blogs, and they'll like send out stuff out on Twitter and Facebook. And then also I'll do a newsletter. Like I keep a newsletter, and so I'll send it out to my readers. Hey, this is available in audiobook. So really, it's like social media driven now,
Right.
except for the newsletters, because that'll be an email. So
Right. And are you having a lot of conversations back and forth with your fans? Is it more of a one way? You're sort of just letting them know that it's out there, and then they talk amongst each other.
my readers come to me before the book comes out. They'll be asking me, when's it coming out in
It's a
audiobook?
good situation to have.
When are they coming back in audiobook? And I'll be like, it's coming soon. Or, or if it gets pushed back. I mean, they're understanding. I think part of it is, too, because, I am Indian, and they're understanding. They understand I have kids and I have dogs.
That's really interesting.
And stuff. So they do understand that it's coming out. But, they come to me. When the book's coming out, they'll ask me, I'll have readers ask me right away, when's it coming? When's the audio coming out? Or they'll just ask me, is it coming out on audio? And then I'll say, now that they know, they'll keep asking me when.
I was going to say, now the answer is, of course, it's coming out on audio, right? Well, thanks so much for taking the time to sit and speak with me today. I think there's been a lot of great advice for up-and-coming ACX authors, and I think between working with studios and offering per finished hour rate, getting your fans involved in the process early, I think we've covered a lot of good stuff that has helped make your audiobook successful and that other authors can learn from.
Thank you. And thank you to ACX for helping me do everything. It's been a great experience. I'm glad that I did them.
That's great, and we're glad to have you. Thanks for joining us today for ACX University. This is Scott. That's Kym. We'll see you next time.